Hello everybody, my name is Tenelin, and today we're going to be covering the topic of gathering scripts and collectibles. What are they, how do you get them, and why should you care? This video will only cover collectibles from botanist and miner and will be targeted towards an introduction into collectibles, but we will also discuss Dawntrail's orange script collectibles, including the best stats and skill rotations that I recommend using. I do plan on releasing a similar video that will cover crafting and one for fishing, so be sure to subscribe for those in the future. If you find this video helpful, don't forget to give it a like. Let's start from the beginning. What are scripts? Well, it's pretty simple. Scripts are just a form of currency that's centered around the crafting and gathering world, and you can use them to buy all sorts of things, such as gear, crafting items, experience boosters, materia, fishing bait, and even a new mount that was added in Dawntrail. The primary way to get gathering scripts is from collectible gathering, which is a unique form of gathering that differs from the standard open up a node, hit it a bunch, and get some items. Not only is it a great way to be able to earn some scripts, but it's also one of the best ways to level your gathering classes. Collectible gathering features a bit of a mini game where you'll use various skills to increase the collectability of an item and then be able to gather that item to turn it into an appraiser vendor for scripts and experience. To unlock collectibles, you must first complete the main story quest called The Better Half, which is a level 50 quest near the start of the Heavensward expansion, and afterwards you'll need to complete the side quest Inscrutable Tastes from the NPC Morgaine in Foundation at around 1010. Each collectible appraiser also has a quest that is required to unlock the script exchange for that expansion. This is usually just a blue quest next to the script exchange NPC that you'll eventually unlock as you progress through each expansion and reach the second city, which is often referred to as the hub city. At the script exchange, you'll open up the related job that you're looking to turn your collectibles in on, and it will show you the rewards that you'll get for all of the different collectibles, as well as the different reward tiers depending on the collectability that you achieve. For example, this level 98 white gold ore will give you 16, 23, or 38 scripts depending on your collectability level, as well as different levels of experience for each tier achieved. You can also find the collectibles by looking under the gathering log, which is the B key on keyboard by default, and searching in the level range that you are under the collectible tab. For this video, I will primarily be talking about the Dawntrail collectibles, but all of this can easily be translated over to any level, and the only difference will be your stats, and potentially the skill rotation depending on your GP. The goal for these type of collectibles is to get them at the highest collectability that you can to get the most rewards for your time spent gathering. Now that you have a bit of an intro into what collectibles are, let's talk about how you actually gather them. The important collectibles are the ones on the timed nodes, and these are nodes that spawn between a certain window, which is a 2-hour period of Eorzean time, but we're going to call it a 5-minute period of real life time. During that 5-minute duration, they can be gathered from a single time, and it's very similar to any of the gathered legendary nodes if you've ever done any of those, but the type of gathering is just different. There are various ways that you're able to track these nodes, but my favorite is using the Teamcraft desktop app and using their alarm overlay. This is just a glorified timer that will tell you when your items are spawning and for how long they're up, and I have a video on my channel that explains more about it and how you can set it up. You can also just turn your in-game clock to Eorzean time and track them via the gathering log to see when they spawn. They are on hard set timers, so you'll always know when they're up. Once we get to one of the nodes, let's take a look at the new gathering menu that we'll be using. There's a lot to take in if this is your first time seeing it, so let's break down what's going on. We have a bunch of new skills that are available to us, a number here in the middle that's on a dial that has a couple of different levels of collectability through these notches here, and a whole bunch of numbers underneath these skills with some percentages, some other things here, and even some checkboxes that change some of the numbers up. Let's start with the dial up here. This is your collectability. These little notches represent the tiers of collectability that you need to hit the different reward levels when turning them into an appraiser. You can see here that it's at 600, 800, and 1000. I personally recommend always trying to go for 1000 collectability, which is the maximum that you can get. But occasionally while you're leveling, that's just not feasible, and it's okay to just hit a couple of different other breakpoints. We have Scour, which is our basic gathering ability, just scaled by gathering stat. We have our Meticulous, which is a skill that gives us a little bit less collectability, but it gives us the chance to save 1 integrity, which is essentially the health of the node, at right now a 25% chance. Then we have Brazen, which is a skill that's a little random. It can do between 100 to 300 or 50% to 150% of your effectiveness of Scour. It also did find some new uses in Dawntrail, where if you get a collector's high standard, it will always give you the maximum amount. For skills, we have Scrutiny, which increases the amount that any of these gathering skills give you for collectability at the cost of some GP, and this scales with Perception. And as well, we have Collector's Focus, which gives you the ability to get a little bit more of a collector's intuition, which is essentially just a random boost into your collectible stats. If you click this checkbox here, you can see that you have a chance of hitting 300 collectability on your Scour, and the chance is your intuition rate, which is at 38% for me right now. As well, you're able to hit this checkbox to see what your Scrutiny would do, which at this point would give me 250 more on each of my different gathering skills. As well, we have Priming Touch, which is a new skill at level 95, which doubles the chance that your Meticulous will save integrity. So we'll make this 25% into a 50%. Now, all of the values that you see on my screen can change depending on your stats. For example, Scour has a maximum value of 200 collectability that you can gain with it, but if you have lower stats, you may see a lower number. The same for Meticulous and Brazen as well, as they are just a percentile of how much your Scour does. For example, Meticulous is a 75% of the effectiveness of Scour. As well, the chance of saving your integrity from your Meticulous also scales with your gathering stat, and your intuition rate scales with your perception stat. The easiest way to tell if your stats are appropriate for the node that you're gathering is to look at these numbers. 200 Scour is the max, the 25% of the Meticulous integrity save is the max, your Scrutiny giving 250 additional is the max. Your intuition rate can go up to 40%, and as you can see, mine is a little low for this node, but those are the numbers that you need to look for if you're trying to gather any collectible in the game. All of them will match those numbers. The ones that I would focus on the most is just making sure your Scour is at 200 and your Scrutiny adds 250. If your numbers are a little bit lower than that, then you don't have quite high enough stats to be able to gather the node effectively, but if you're in the leveling stage, that's okay. This is the best way to figure out if you're appropriately gathering nodes, because unfortunately I'm not able to go through every single expansion and every single collectible. Just having this knowledge is what you'll need to be able to figure out if a collectible is good for you. If you aren't sure if you have the correct stats to gather a collectible efficiently, this is how you can tell. For some of the Dawntrail nodes, we're not going to have the full 40% intuition, as it's the least prioritized stat, and getting to that full 40% in 7.0 is just not worth the amount of materia that we'd have to meld. In future patches though, that will definitely change. I'm sorry to say that it might be a little bit too much to break down all the collectibles and expansions and what stats I would recommend, but when in doubt, purchase the highest tier script gear that you can get at your level, and you should be able to go and gather all of the collectibles with it. For the Dawntrail collectibles though, being this early into an expansion, the script gear is definitely usable, but it does have a downside of being job specific, so you will have to farm out a set for both Botanist and Miner, and it also doesn't include accessories. Here are the stat requirements for all of the breakpoints in Dawntrail and what we'll build our current gear around. In my opinion, the optimal stats to gather all of the collectibles for Dawntrail is 4,965 gathering and 4,831 perception, as well as getting around 940 GP, so that when we use the GP food such as the nasi goreng, you'll be able to hit the 1000 GP rotation that I'm going to show you later on, which will give you the most amount of collectibles per node. This amount of gathering allows you to hit the skill maximum by far, but also lets you hit the 25% proc chance on the Meticulous skill, so you have a higher chance of saving integrity. With the Perception, we're only worried about getting the plus collectability on our Scrutiny. In order to achieve these stats, I would recommend getting the Thunder Yards crafted, high quality gear, and get your melds going on those. For reference, I will include the melds that I went with down below, which is the Teamcraft recommended melds. There is also a budget set they have on their website that does also meet these stats. My particular set of gear is melded to be able to do the legendary folklore nodes effectively as well, so if that's something you'd like to do, I would recommend copying it exactly. If you are watching this post 7.1 release, make sure to check out the new gear and melds, as there will be some new left side gear and tools. Now that you've got an idea of the stats and gear you're looking to get, let's talk about how you gather them. Again, I use the Teamcraft alarm overlay, and I set all of my collectibles into a single alarm group that I can toggle on and off depending on when I want to gather them. As I mentioned earlier, each collectible will be available to gather a single time during the 5-minute window that it spawns, so we're looking to maximize the amount of items we can get, as well as hitting the max collectability for the most amount of scripts to turn in on. The decision you'll have to make though is what kind of scripts you are looking to get. Orange and purple scripts in Dawntrail share the same nodes and timers, so it will just depend on which item you pick when you arrive. Now both types of scripts have plenty of uses, so be sure to check out the vendors and make sure you're getting the ones that you need. The orange scripts are for things like script gear, the level 12 gathering materia, Aethersands, and even the new mount token to get the new mount, and purple scripts are for things like folklore books, level 11 gathering materia, and some of the older fishing baits. Anyway, let's get back to the node. There are two main forms of rotations that I would recommend, the 800/900 GP rotation and the 1000 GP rotation. Let's start with the lower amount on the 800/900 GP rotation. If you have 900, you're going to start with a priming touch. Otherwise, you're going to skip that first step. For this one, we'll run the 900 and we'll use priming touch. Then we're going to use scrutiny. And as you can see, the priming touch put my chance of saving integrity to 50%. So I'm going to use meticulous. Now I hit 500 here, but I did not hit a collector's standard. So I'm going to just go ahead and use scrutiny, priming touch, and meticulous again. I still have my 6 out of 6 integrity. Because I got the 900 though, I am able to use a meticulous to get 150. If I were to only have 800 at this point, I would use just a straight scour, and there also was a chance that I just hit 1000 collectability off of this. So I'm going to go ahead and use meticulous. And I saved all of my integrity using meticulous, so this was a very successful gather. Let's go ahead and collect, and I'm going to collect again, and then I'm going to use ageless words, or if this was mining, it'd be solid reason. I'm going to go ahead and use that, and it gives me 1 integrity back, and I got the 50% proc to get the Eureka movement, which gives me wise to the world. So I'll get another integrity out of it. I'll go ahead and collect all of my items, which I got a grand total of 8 because of this, and this was a very successful gather. Now, for the 1000 GP rotation, you're going to have to use some sort of food that gives you some GP. As you can see here, I'm going to use Yakao Masaka, which will give me an additional 55, which doesn't quite put me to 1000, but I will gain some while I hit the node, which will push me over the edge. So we also got a proc here that you can see. Because my max GP is over 930, which is actually a hidden stat because it's over 960, I got an additional 2 integrity. If I only had 930, it would just be a +1 integrity. So, for the 1000 GP rotation, you're going to hit scrutiny and meticulous. Now, I didn't hit a collector's high standard, just a normal collector's standard. So we're just going to go ahead and do scrutiny and meticulous again, and I did hit another collector's standard, which does bump my meticulous up to 200, so even if I were at 800, I'd be able to just meticulous again. If I didn't have the collector's standard, I would just use a scour for 200, or there was a chance that I just hit 1000 off of those 2 gathers. Unfortunately, this one wasn't the most successful. I didn't hit any of my integrity saves yet. Let's go ahead and hit the last meticulous. But I did save my integrity there. Now we're going to go ahead and collect. And you see we still have 600 GP, which allows us to use solid reason twice. So I'm going to use it once here. And I did hit a Eureka moment, which does give me wise to the world for an additional integrity. And then I'll use solid reason again. I didn't get the wise to the world proc on that one, which put me up to 7 more gathers. Let's go ahead and collect all of these. And as you can see, I was able to get 9 of the 1000 collectability items off of this single node. While you're learning, I recommend just having these two graphics open and ready to go just in case you need to understand what you're supposed to do depending on the different things that happen. Collectables do have slight variation because of the intuition procs in the randomness of the collector's high standard and the collector's standard, so you do need to get an idea of the flowchart of what you're trying to do. But that's everything that you'll need to know for how to gather the collectibles. Continue just following through your timers and gather them as you go, remembering that each collectible does take an inventory slot, so make sure you don't cap out on space while you're mid-collectible. I've done this a couple of times and it's never fun. That should cover everything though. If you found this helpful, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you'd like to support me making more videos, be sure to check out my Ko-fi link in the description. Thank you all, and happy gathering!